Chair now recognizes Mr. Biggs from Arizona for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to put up on the board in just a second, but this is the entire transcript of the Devin Archer testimony I submitted to the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much. So, in this particular colloquy that's going on, highlighted up there, you'll see that Mr. Archer says, let's start at the beginning. Let's go somewhere else. He says, the question is, did Hunter talk about how bringing his dad, Joe Biden, either to Ukraine or using his dad as vice president would add value in the eyes of Burisma officials? Answer, yes. How did it come up? He says, well, we were business partners. It just came up. We were business partners. We're business partners. Okay. What kind of leverage was Hunter trying to get by using his dad? Answer by Devin. I think it's more defensive, defensive leverage, that the value is there in his work. Also in this same document, I asked him, I said, the brand, he said, what is it? You keep talking about the Biden brand. I said, is it Dr. Jill? Is it Brother Jim? No. He just looks at me like I'm an idiot. He says, of course it's Joe Biden. Of course it's Joe Biden. Then you go back and you see Tony Bobulinski. What does he say? Quote, the Biden family aggressively leveraged the Biden family name to make millions of dollars from foreign entities, even though some were from communist-controlled China. And who is the Biden family asset? Is it Dr. Jill? No. Brother Jim? No. Any of the grandkids that got money from foreign companies? No. None of those folks. None of those folks. Then you get the stuff released from Ways and Means yesterday. This is Hunter Biden saying to his uncle Jim, BS, Jim, all around BS. Explain to me one thing Tony Bobulinski brings to my table that I so desperately need that I'm willing to sign over my family's brand. What's the brand? Joe Biden. And pretty much the rest of my business life. Why? Because that's the only product I got. Joe Biden, the vice president at that time. It's plain English. I'm cleaning it up a little bit. There's a lot of swear words in there. Why would I give this marginal bully the keys to my family's only asset? Oh, okay, so but we're told that there's nothing linking him. So I got to ask this question. Mr. Turley, I'm going to ask you a question. If the brand and what you're selling is Joe Biden, the then vice president, and if Joe Biden or his family is receiving some kind of benefit by the sale of access or, I'll leave it there, selling of access or even the illusion of access to Joe Biden, what does that lead you to conclude?
Well, if you look at actual cases that I've cited in my testimony, benefits to family members can be viewed as a benefit to the principal. So there's not much debate about that. The issue of the inquiry is whether there has been let me stop say there has been progress in the last few weeks, and that many people after the Archer testimony said, yeah, I get it, it's influence peddling. Some have said it's the illusion of access, which is...
That's the new defense.
Yeah.
Is that solution?
But I think that calling it by its correct name is important, and it is a form of corruption. The benefits to the family members can be attributed to the principal, even under the higher standard of criminal cases. So what remains is the question is, did the president know that, direct that, participate in that?
Well, we know that he made 20 calls to business associates. We know he's having dinners with those associates, which leads me to the follow-up question, which I think is critical here, because these guys are looking for the gold bars or the cash stuffed in the Menendez coat. That doesn't happen very often, in my experience, having tried a lot of cases. So my question for you is, tell us about when you have circumstantial evidence vis-a-vis direct evidence. What's its value? Can you rest a conviction on circumstantial evidence?
You can. One of the things I point out, though, in my testimony is the Supreme Court has narrowed some of the elements on things like bribery, denial of honest services. Those elements are now narrower than they were. But it is notable in the Menendez indictment that they brought the conspiracy on honest services, that they still believe that these types of gifts obviously can be based on a conspiracy theory. You're clearly correct. I mean, if the allegations against Senator Menendez are true, that's really sort of old school bribery. Not since Jefferson and his freezer have we seen that type of raw evidence. Today, it's a lot more sophisticated. Yeah. I think everyone in this room has to acknowledge that influence peddling is the favorite form of corruption in Washington. I think that's unassailable, and it's much more sophisticated than handing over gold bars or whatever is alleged in the Menendez case.
Mr. Chairman, I have a document I'd like to get in. I appreciate that my colleague trusts the American people. And the CNN poll that says the majority of Americans believe Joe Biden as vice president was involved with his son's business dealings. Submit that for the record.
Without objection, so
Mr.
ordered.
Chairman, I have another unanimous consent motion. I'd move with unanimous consent to introduce an order from the Supreme Court of the state of New York from Tuesday where the Trump Organization was found liable for fraud, and it's specifically on page 28 where there's a paragraph entitled, quote, "The Trump brand premium that was increased the value of Trump assets by 15 or 30% according to the Trump Organization."
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Mr. Frost from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. An impeachment inquiry is a grave undertaking that is supposed to be in response to evidence of a crime. Mr. Chairman, you have questions. Many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle in this hearing have questions, but questions are not the basis for an impeachment. Evidence is. Mr. Turley, on September 1st, Speaker Kevin McCarthy said that he would not launch a fake impeachment inquiry, a sham impeachment inquiry. But then on September 12th, just 12 days later, he completely changed his mind. My question is why? In those 12 days, did hard evidence appear that clearly and directly links the President of the United States, Joe Biden, to a crime?
I can't answer as to what was it that pushed the Speaker to make the decision. The courts have said you don't have to have that vote on the floor. I think it is a best practice. But
I'm very interested in those 12 days. And we know you're not a fact witness and you're talking about things that are already public. But is there anything that came up in those 12 days that linked the President of the United States to a crime? Yes or no?
I don't have any recollection of those 12 days.
Yeah, nothing. I can tell you it's nothing. And we've heard even from you that this is why we have this impeachment inquiry. But let's be clear, this inquiry has been going on since the day we got here. Since the day I was sworn in at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night, this impeachment inquiry started. Let's pull back the curtain on what's really going on. There's no evidence of crime, only desperation and political pressure. This is what's going on. The far right called for the sham impeachment hearing with no evidence at the beginning of this year when we first got started. This impeachment inquiry has been going on. This is not the first hearing we've had in relation to this. On September 1st, the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, says, no, we're not going to do that. We don't have the evidence. We don't have the votes for it to pass on the House floor. We're not going to do it. A good decision, in my opinion. But then just 12 days later, 12 precious days later, something happens. I'm not sure what, but something happens because then the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, comes out and says, yes, we will do an impeachment inquiry. So what happened between these 12 days? It's very simple. 3 threats from members of his own caucus at the direction of former President Donald Trump changed his mind. Number one, the threat to force a vote on impeachment, which would lose on the House floor and be another embarrassment in the long list of embarrassments this Congress for the Speaker of the House. Number two, they would threat to shut down the government, something that will happen in just 2 days. And number three, and this is the one that really got to him, they said, you about to lose your job. And they said, we will remove you as Speaker from the House. And that scared him so much that Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House of the United States of Representatives, third in line to the presidency, completely caved due to the threats of people within his own caucus. This fake impeachment is based on desperate political calculation, not any evidence. And Mr. Chairman, you say this hearing is to establish the basis for this fake sham impeachment hearing, but these witnesses are not giving us any basis or giving us any evidence or giving us any solutions.
They are giving us
several times.
I reclaim my time.
I have to stop because that's not a true statement.
I reclaim my time. These witnesses are not giving any answers. They're just asking more questions. We have one witness who has a lot of questions, Ms. O'Connor. Dubinsky, one witness who knows something about accounting but has no real involvement in what's going on. And Mr. Turley stopping here on his way to his next Fox News hit. This is not a serious inquiry. And impeachment is something that's very serious. And we have to ensure that we focus on the wants and needs of the American people. This is all for nothing. Half the crowd is left. There's no line outside. The goal here to distract from the government shutdown is not going to work. And to the Speaker, I have to say, you're being played by these extremists and Donald Trump. It's costing us our economy. And this entire fake impeachment inquiry isn't about the United States. It's about Hunter Biden. And the only thing the president can be guilty of here is being a father. I yield back to the ranking member.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Turner from.
He yielded.
Sorry, I yield to the vice ranking member.
No, the gentleman from Florida yielded back. Chair.
Said he yielded back to the
I
vice
yielded
ranking
back. I
member.
yielded to the vice ranking member.
Thank you, and I'll claim some of that extra time back as well. Much of the Republican case and evidence has relied on words from Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden said this, Hunter Biden said that, therefore, case closed, there's something here. Professor Gerhardt, we know, I believe it's wide knowledge with the public, that Hunter Biden sadly was dealing with substance misuse disorder, correct?
Correct.
He's been under indictment, correct?
Correct.
Is this a reliable witness that you would deem?
Probably not.
In your assessment?
Gentle's ladies, time's
Thank you very much.
Chair now recognizes
Chairman,
Mr. Armstrong. You
I
seek
have three
recognition.
unanimous consent motions.
Yes.
One is a hearing notice from June 10th, 2019, with an impeachment hearing with Joyce Vance, who was not a fact witness, Barbara McQuaid, who was not a fact witness, and 70s story time with John Dean. Secondly, there's another unanimous consent motion for a hearing notice in judiciary with two witnesses here just a week before we voted on impeachment in 2019 with Michael Gerhardt and Jonathan Turley. Appreciate you both being here very much, but you were not fact witnesses at that point in time. And the Webster's definition of hypocrisy.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now
Mr.
recognizes.
Chairman, I request unanimous.
Chair recognizes Ms. Bass.
Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to enter an article into the record dated January 6, 2019. A member of this own committee, the day after she was sworn in, came into Congress, and this article says, Dem split in response to her words, impeach the mother effer, the day after she was sworn in. Some might even say these kinds of comments, not only are they hypocritical by the left in their arguments today, but that this is an embarrassment to the time and people of this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman, I'm afraid my friend, the gentlelady from South Carolina, just engaged in personalities against a fellow member of the committee.
Well, which she entered in the record was, I believe it was Ms. Talib's.
Well, it was the
word.
commentary that accompanied it that I'm referring
It was an article
to.
from January 6,
That's what she
2018. Dem split
Right.
in response to impeach
Yeah.
Said
the
it.
mother effer comment by a member of this committee.
Right, it was the commentary, and in any event, it doesn't make any
No,
difference.
she said it. She actually said it.
No, but Rule 17
She said
says-
impeach the mother
The
effer.
commentary of what she is presenting.
The article title is
the
Dem
gentlelady's
split in response
commentary
to
All right,
around
all
impeach
right,
the mother
let's
effer
get on with it. I mean,
That's
the
title
government's
of the
about to
article,
shut
Mr.
down. Okay.
Chairman.
All right. Chair, order. Chair now recognizes Mr. LaTurner from Kansas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The mischaracterization of what this hearing is about by my colleagues on the other side is astounding. Throughout the presidency of Joe Biden, the White House has attempted to claim that the president did not talk to Hunter about his business dealings. Joe Biden even said during the 2020 presidential debate that no members of his family received money from China. He said, and I quote, "My son has not made money in terms of this thing about China. Nobody else has made money from China," end quote. The White House strategy has been deny, 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 lie, and then counterattack. But the evidence and the facts have forced the White House to change its story time and time again. The White House handlers continue to shift the goalposts, and President Biden continues to lie. How can President Biden continue to maintain that Hunter's private business was simply that, private, when it's clear from bank records, emails, and testimony that Joe Biden was intimately involved in Hunter's pay-to-play schemes and crooked foreign business dealings. This image shows an email between Hunter Biden and his business associates stating the setup of equity in a Chinese-owned energy venture. This particular business deal was with CEFC, a Chinese-owned energy conglomerate. This email lays out the payment structure for equity in the company, which was known to be tied to the Chinese Communist Party through its owner, Chairman Yi Jinping. The committee's investigation into the Biden family, including evidence turned over through various document productions, has shown that these men were all in business with Hunter Biden at one time or another. James Gillier, Tony Bobulinski, and Rob Walker on separate occasions, along with other Hunter business partners, have confirmed what this email said, that they were all getting a cut. Who else was getting a cut?
What is the date of that email, sir?
This is my time.
I'm just asking the date.
This is
you're
my,
entering something
this is
into
my
the record.
time. Mr. Chairman, I ask that my time be restored.
Please restore Mr. Letourneur's time.
Thank you. Who else was getting a cut? According to this email, 10% was going to the big guy. What I'm sure my colleagues on the other side are asking themselves is, who's the big guy? Well, let me tell you. We learned in the FBI's FD 1023 that Zlochevsky called Joe Biden the big guy. Tony Bobulinski also has corroborated that Joe Biden is the big guy. Rob Walker, an IRS whistleblower, say that Joe Biden is the big guy. And finally, the Justice Department obstructed investigators in Delaware who wanted to look into, you guessed it, the big guy. Listen, folks, it is obvious. Joe Biden is the big guy. And so what do we have here? We have the president saying that he had nothing to do with, that Hunter Biden and no one in the family profited from China. And we have evidence here that the big guy was getting 10%. Let me read you a definition of a trendy word here lately. Gaslighting. It's a form of psychological manipulation in which an abuser attempts to gain power and control over the other person by distorting reality and forcing them to question their own judgment and intuition. I would say to the American people, look at the evidence before you and make a judgment, and do not allow the White House or our colleagues on the other side of the aisle try to convince you that what you're seeing isn't the truth, trying to convince you that you're crazy. Mr. Dubinsky, you have extensive experience as an expert witness and consultant in the areas of white-collar crime, financial fraud, and corruption. Is it characteristic of these types of crimes that actors hide behind nicknames or other pseudonyms to mask their identity?
It's very common.
What about this first email image is characteristic of financial crimes that you have investigated or provided expert testimony on in the past?
Well, typically you'll see code names used, and money is being paid to somebody under that code name, and that's how these processes work.
Let me ask you something. You're very experienced. When conducting an investigation, if your boss prevented you from taking investigative steps, how would you react? How would it affect your findings?
First, it would be extremely troubling if I was told not to continue to investigate something, and if I was put in that position, I'd probably withdraw from the investigation.
Has the Department of Justice ever restricted any of your investigative steps?
No, they have not.
It's amazing. Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Lee from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 hours and 45 or so minutes into this, the Republicans' own witnesses have confirmed that they have seen no evidence of any evidence. I think that if my Republican colleagues had a so-called smoking gun, they would have presented it by now and would have talked about it nonstop.
Can the gentlelady read a bank statement, an email, a text message?
Are you asking her to yield,
reclaiming
Mr.
my
Chairman?
time. Thank you.
All right.
Reclaiming my time. Instead, we're sitting here with no fact witnesses and no evidence in this sham so-called impeachment to distract from their inability to fulfill their basic duty to fund and run our government. Republicans know the American people don't want their shutdown. So instead, the Republicans on this committee are attempting to divert and distract the American people's attention by spending taxpayer dollars on this sham impeachment hearing 2 days before they shut the government down in hopes that the media, and I don't just mean Fox News will fall for their scheme and give more airtime to the lies being told on this committee today than the real life impact their shutdown will have on even their own constituents' lives. In fact, in Chairman Comer's district, Republicans' shutdown will cost 8,937 of his constituents their paychecks. In Jim Jordan's district, Republicans' shutdown will cost 3,939 of his constituents their paychecks. In Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, Republicans' shutdown will cost 6,306 of her constituents their paychecks. In Lauren Boebert's district, Republicans shut down.
Democrats are the party of shutdowns. You guys love shutdowns.
Thank you very much. In Lauren Boebert's district, Republicans shutdown will cost 9,016 of her constituents their paycheck. In Paul Gosar's Arizona district, Republicans shutdown will cost 12,349 of his constituents their paycheck. In Byron Donalds, 3,235 folks paycheck. In Andy Biggs, 8,433. In Lisa McLean, 7,286. In Scott Perry's Pennsylvania district and the capital of my Commonwealth, Republicans shutdown will cost 5,445 of his constituents who will lose their paycheck. Indeed, when you add it all up, Republicans shutdown will cost 217,583 of their constituents on this committee's paychecks, their income for who knows how long. Let that sink in for a second. Those are our mothers, our fathers, caretakers, brothers, sisters, moms, dad, grandmas, grandpas, friends, neighbors, beloved community members, veterans who won't know how their food or medicine will be paid for or where their rent money is coming from. Many of them vote Republican, but I bet you not one of them cares more about Hunter Biden's laptop or helping Kevin McCarthy keep his gig as leader or speaker of his dysfunctional caucus than they care about receiving their paycheck and making their ends meet. And so the Republicans on this committee are betting that we'll spend this hearing engaging in partisan bickering over their favorite buzzwords rather than talking about how the MAGA shutdown will crush all of our constituents. To be honest, I don't quite care about private citizen Hunter, whom the proper authorities are dealing with, or the cable news culture war distractions. I care about the 7 million babies, children, mothers across this country who after Sunday will lose access to food and formula, over 10,000 in my district alone. I care about 300,000 families to 20,000 veterans who after Sunday could face eviction from their homes. Rare diseases and cancer patients whose experimental trials will be delayed for months. And I care about our seniors unable to get help with Social Security and Medicare. And make no mistake, their attacks are targeted, both in who's behind them and who are going to be hurt most. The most marginalized folks bear the brunt of these MAGA Republicans' attacks. Black folks, brown folks, trans folks, poor folks, disabled folks. Keeping that struggle in mind, we've had 2 hearings on the infant formula shortage on the subcommittee chaired by Congresswoman McClain. Yet with the 320,000 babies, women, and children in her home state of Michigan about to go hungry due to her party's shutdown, it seems like my Republican colleagues only care about an issue when they can point the finger in another direction, much like what's going on in this embarrassment of a hearing today. Mr. Gerhardt, in one of your recent op-eds, and you have repeated it here, you mentioned that a good test for assessing the constitutionality of a governmental action is to switch the names of the political parties and the actors involved. If the outcome is the same, it is a good sign of neutrality. If the outcome is not the same, then there's a good chance that partisanship is the driving force. I think we can safely say that this inquiry would fail that neutrality test. And since I don't have time, I think we can say that we are here, America, in this sham hearing, prioritizing the political needs of the Republican Party, pushing a lie for Donald Trump as you go hungry and you lose your homes. Shameful.
At the request of the witnesses, we're going to take a 10-minute